The city was silent. Broken buildings reached into the sky like jagged teeth. Dust swirled in the empty streets, and the wind carried the faint smell of smoke and decay. No one walked the streets anymore. Civilization had collapsed years ago, leaving only ruins, silence, and the desperate few who had survived. Two small figures moved carefully between the debris. They were girls, but not human. Their skin was pale blue, eyes wide and shining, and their limbs thin and fragile. They looked almost ghostly against the dark streets. Hunger made their movements slow, careful, but determined. Each step was painful, but the thought of finding food kept them moving. "Do you think we will find anything today?" whispered the younger one, her voice trembling like the leaves in the wind. "I hope so," replied her older sister, scanning the ruins around them. Her sharp eyes noticed every shadow, every dark corner. "We cannot go back empty-handed. Mother would be angry, but Mother was gone." The collapse had taken everyone they had loved. Families, friends, neighbors, all vanished. And now the girls survived only because they had each other. Ahead, a faint glow flickered. A small stall sat on the edge of the street, with a weak fire burning in a rusty metal container. Smoke curled into the air. The human who ran the stall appeared, tending to a few scraps of food. He was rough, with a thick beard and hands cracked from years of work. His eyes were tired but watchful. The girls stopped a few steps away. Hunger gnawed at their bellies. They had nothing to offer, no money, no goods, no weapons. Only themselves. Desperation weighed on them like a stone. The older girl whispered to her sister, "We have no choice. We cannot leave hungry." Trembling, they stepped closer. Their voices were barely audible. "Please, sir, food. We are hungry," the younger one said. The human looked up, startled. He had seen many things in his life, but these creatures, fragile, scared, and human-like in their expressions, stirred something he had almost forgotten: compassion. The girl's eyes were full of pleading. They did not speak of money or trade. They spoke of need, of survival. Their hands shook as they reached forward. The older girl spoke now, her voice small but steady. We have nothing. We can't give our bodies for food." The human froze. His heart pounded. He had known hunger and danger, but never had anyone offered themselves in such a way. Shock and anger collided in his mind. Could he accept such a thing? Could he refuse? The girls stood still, waiting, shivering in the cold night. Their stomachs ached, their legs were weak, and yet they remained, hoping for mercy. The wind blew stronger, rustling the tattered flags hanging from ruined windows. Every sound of the empty city felt amplified, every shadow threatening. For a moment, time slowed. The human studied them. He saw innocence. He saw fear. He saw desperation. And he saw a choice. One that could define him. One that could define what remained of humanity in a world that had forgotten kindness. Slowly, he approached, keeping his voice calm. "Sit," he said. "You will not give yourself. You will eat." The girls' eyes widened. They did not understand. This was not how the world worked anymore. Hunger had hardened creatures, made them selfish and cruel. They expected rejection, perhaps even violence. Yet here was a human, offering food. He placed scraps of dried meat, hard bread, and some water on a worn tray. The fire's glow reflected in the girls' eyes, and for the first time in many weeks they smiled. It was small, hesitant, but real. As they ate, the older girl looked around nervously. "Are there others?" she asked. "Will they take it from us?" The human shook his head. "Not tonight. Tonight, eat. Tomorrow, we will see." But even as he spoke, the shadows in the alley moved. Figures lurked just beyond the firelight, watching. Danger was never far away. The girl's trust was fragile. And the city held secrets in every corner, waiting for the unwary. The night grew colder. The wind howled between ruined walls. Smoke from the fire mixed with the dust in the air. The girls ate quickly, each bite giving them a small piece of hope, but their eyes remained wary. Survival had taught them that hope could vanish as quickly as it came. Yet in that moment, for the first time since the collapse, a small spark of something new flickered in their hearts. They had found kindness. They had found a human who could choose compassion over cruelty. And in a city of silence, that spark was louder than any shout. The human watched them, and in his own way, he felt the weight of his choice. He had decided to protect, to give, and perhaps to start a small thread of humanity in a world that had almost lost it entirely. The streets remained dark. The city still whispered threats, but at the stall 2 starving alien girls were safe for the night, and somewhere in the ruins hope had begun to grow. The night grew colder around the small stall. Smoke curled lazily from the fire, but the wind tried to snatch it away. The human leaned against a broken wall, watching the 2 girls eat. Their pale blue skin glimmered faintly in the firelight, and their wide eyes darted nervously at every sound. Every step in the ruined city could hide danger, and the girls had learned that the hard way. He studied them closely. Hunger twisted their faces, but it was not only hunger he saw. He saw fear. He saw loss. He saw trust, fragile but reaching out to him in silent hope. The older girl, still trembling, looked up from her bread. "Sir, why help us?" she asked. Her voice was small, almost afraid it would disappear into the cold night. The human's eyes softened. He had survived many years in this broken city. He had fought scavengers, avoided gangs, and scavenged scraps to stay alive. He had learned that in a collapsed world, survival was often cruel. But now, looking at them, he felt something he had not felt in years: responsibility. "Because I can," he said simply. "Because you do not deserve to starve." "No one does." The girls blinked. That answer was so simple, yet it felt like a miracle. They had expected greed, cruelty, or even worse, indifference. Instead, he offered something rare: compassion. The younger girl glanced at her sister. Can we trust him?" she whispered. The older girl nodded slowly. They had learned that trust was dangerous. People rarely acted purely for kindness, especially humans. Yet here was proof that sometimes they did. The human moved closer and gestured for them to sit beside the stall. "Eat slowly. You are safe for now." They hesitated for a moment. Then hunger won. Their hands shook as they reached for the food, biting quickly, greedily, but with a strange reverence. It was not only food, they were tasting safety, a small piece of normalcy in a world that had none. As they ate, the human's mind turned over a decision he had not anticipated. He could not ignore what they had offered earlier. The thought of their desperation had touched something deep inside him. Accepting such an offer, it went against every instinct. But refusing, turning them away, he could not do that either. Their lives were fragile, and the city around them offered no mercy. A faint noise interrupted his thoughts. Somewhere in the ruins, the wind shifted and carried a sound. Shuffling footsteps, low murmurs, the scraping of metal. He tensed. Danger was never far in this city. Raiders or scavengers could appear at any moment. The older girl looked up, sensing his tension. "Who is that?" she asked, eyes wide. "Nothing for now," he said, keeping his voice calm. "But be ready. Sometimes people are not kind." She nodded. Trust had to be balanced with caution. They had survived this long by noticing the smallest hints of danger. He returned his attention to them, noticing how thin they had become. Their stomachs were swollen with hunger, but their bodies were fragile, almost too delicate to bear the strain of another harsh day. His decision became clear: he would protect them, at least for now. Not because of rules or trade or profit, but because it was right. The younger girl's voice trembled again. We do not have anything. Anything to give you?" He shook his head. "You do not need to give me anything. Food is not a trade. It is survival. Survival is worth more than anything else." The older girl stared at him, disbelief clear in her expression. No one had ever said such words to them before. They had offered themselves out of desperation, expecting cruelty or denial. Instead, they were met with generosity. Hours passed as they ate, huddled near the fire. Outside, the city remained silent, empty, dangerous. Every ruined building could hide a threat. Every shadow could hold a predator. Yet inside the small circle of firelight, there was a rare peace. The human finally spoke, voice low but firm. "You will stay here tonight. Tomorrow I will show you how to find food safely. You will not need to risk yourselves again. But you must learn, this city is cruel. Trust is rare. Use it wisely." The girls nodded, understanding. Learning to survive was not just about food. It was about watching, listening, and making careful choices. Trusting the wrong person could end everything. The human looked at the night sky, broken and dark, dotted with a few pale stars. Civilization was gone, but in that small corner something remained. Humanity. Not just the race, but the courage, the kindness, the strength to act rightly even when it was dangerous. The girls finished the last crumbs of bread. Their hunger was eased, but the lessons of the night were just beginning. They had seen the choice a human could make, and it had given them hope. A fragile, flickering hope in a world that had none. The wind picked up, carrying the sound of distant movement. Shadows stretched along the walls. Danger had not disappeared. The night was long, and survival was not guaranteed. But for the first time since the collapse, the girls felt a strange sense of possibility. The human sat back, keeping watch, and thought to himself, sometimes surviving the night was not enough. Sometimes doing what is right, helping those who cannot help themselves, could change everything. Tonight that choice had been made, and in the streets of silence that small act of humanity would echo far beyond the ruined walls. The first light of dawn crept slowly across the ruined city. Broken windows caught the pale rays and scattered them across the empty streets. The wind had calmed, leaving the ruins quiet except for the soft crackle of the fire at the human stall. The girls stirred, their small bodies stiff from the cold night. Hunger had been eased, but their bellies still ached from weeks without proper food. The older girl rubbed her arms and glanced at the human. Thank you," she said quietly. "We have never had food like this." He nodded, his rough hands brushing ash from the tray. "It's not much, but it will keep you alive. That is all that matters right now." The younger girl stared at the bread, her fingers trembling. We cannot pay you." "Nothing." The human shook his head. "You owe me nothing. Just survive. That is payment enough." For a moment silence fell. Outside, the city seemed even more empty under the early light. But inside the circle of warmth, something new had begun. Hope. The girls realized that survival was not just about finding scraps. It was about trust, about small acts of kindness, and the courage to step forward even when fear pressed from every side. The older girl finally spoke, her voice small but firm. "Sir, will you teach us?" He looked at her curiously. "Teach you? How to survive safely without giving ourselves, without begging." Her words were slow, cautious. She did not want to assume too much, but the glimmer in her eyes betrayed hope. The human nodded. "I will, but you must be ready. The city is not safe, and not everyone will be kind." The girls listened intently as he spoke. He showed them simple ways to find food, foraging in abandoned buildings, avoiding traps set by scavengers, using shadows to stay hidden. He taught them how to watch the streets and read danger. Every lesson was small, but it gave them tools to survive. As the day wore on, the girls began to understand something they had never felt before. They could be more than victims. They could act. They could learn. They could protect themselves and help each other. The older girl picked up a small piece of hard bread and broke it in half. She handed one piece to her sister, smiling faintly. "See, we can share and still survive." The younger girl nodded. She had never felt such warmth before. Even among her own people, trust had been rare. Now, with a human watching over them, they felt a new kind of safety. A fragile, flickering hope that maybe the world had not entirely forgotten kindness. Yet even as they began to feel safe, the city reminded them of danger. A sudden noise, metal scraping against stone, made them both freeze. The human's eyes narrowed. He gestured for them to stay low, his body tensing like a predator preparing to defend its ground. From the shadows, a figure emerged. Not far away, another human, scavenger by the looks of him, was approaching. His eyes were sharp, hungry, and dangerous. He stopped, noticing the girls and the fire, and a small smile crossed his face. "Food, eh?" the stranger muttered, stepping closer. "I hope you don't mind sharing." The human stepped forward, placing himself between the girls and the stranger. "Back off," he said. His voice was firm, controlled, but with an edge that left no room for argument. The stranger hesitated, sizing him up. The girls watched, hearts pounding. Could this human protect them? Could he defend them from the dangers that always lurked in the ruins? After a tense moment, the stranger shook his head and moved on. The girls exhaled, relief flooding their faces. The human gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "You see? Survival is not just food. It's being smart, knowing when to act and when to hide." The day passed slowly. The girls practiced what they had learned, moving carefully through the nearby ruins, finding small scraps of edible plants and scavenging what little they could safely carry. Each success gave them confidence. Each small act of survival reminded them that they had a chance to live, a chance to grow stronger. By evening, the human had returned with more food. He handed it to the girls without comment. They accepted it, their hands shaking less now. For the first time, they understood the quiet power of hope. It was not a loud thing. It was a small fire inside, a certainty that even in a broken world, life could continue. Sitting together by the fire, the girls began to talk softly. They spoke of the past, of family lost, of cities that once thrived but now lay in ruins. They did not cry, there was no time for despair yet, but they felt the weight of it. And still, amid that grief, a small bright thing grew. Trust in this human and the hope that tomorrow could be better. The human watched them quietly. He knew that their journey was just beginning. The city would remain dangerous. Scavengers, rogue gangs, and the cold cruelty of survival would never disappear. But for tonight, the girls had learned something more valuable than food. They had learned that humanity could be kind, even when the world had gone mad. And in that quiet circle of firelight, amid the ruins of a dead city, the first true spark of hope was lit. Night fell again, and the city's ruins seemed colder, darker and more dangerous than ever. Shadows stretched across broken streets and crumbling walls, twisting like living things. The two alien girls sat near the fire at the human stall, sharing what little food remained. Their bellies were no longer empty, but their minds were heavy. The older girl looked into the fire, her eyes reflecting the flickering flames. Do you want to hear what happened to our people?" she asked quietly, glancing at her sister. The human paused, studying them. He could see that the girls carried more than hunger. They carried memories of loss and pain heavy enough to break even the strongest spirit. "If you want to tell me, I will listen," he said. "But remember, you are safe here. Nothing will harm you tonight." The girls exchanged a small glance. Then slowly the older one began to speak. Her voice was soft but steady. "Our cities, they burned. Machines we could not control. Weapons we could not stop. We fought each other, thinking it would save us, but it only made everything worse. Hunger spread, sickness spread, and one by one everyone we loved disappeared." The younger girl shivered, hugging herself. We ran. We did not know where to go. Streets were full of bodies, of fire, of screams." Her voice cracked, but she held her head high, not wanting to cry in front of the human. The human listened in silence. He had seen destruction before, yes, but nothing like this. Not the pain of two small innocent lives stripped of everything. His chest ached at the thought, but he knew words could not undo their suffering. Only action could help them now. "You survived," he said finally. "That means you are strong. Stronger than you think." The older girl looked at him with a faint smile. "We survived, but we are still alone. And the world. It is still dangerous," he nodded. The city outside was unforgiving. Shadows could hide gangs of scavengers, rogue humans, or worse, creatures mutated by the collapse. Every sound, every movement could signal danger. And yet he could not leave them to face it alone. Not now. Suddenly a noise made them all freeze. From a nearby alley came the scrape of metal and a low, rough voice. "Food. Fire. There's someone here." The human's hand went to the small weapon at his side, eyes scanning the darkness. The girls crouched behind him, their bodies tense. Fear was sharp and immediate. A figure emerged, hunched and wary. At first it seemed human, but closer inspection revealed something else. Scavengers of the collapse, twisted and cruel, eyes glinting in the firelight, had noticed the fire. They had come for food or for anything they could steal. The human stood tall, placing himself between the intruders and the girls. "This is not yours," he said firmly. His voice carried authority, warning, and a promise that he would defend those in his care. The scavengers laughed, low and cruel, circling the fire. One stepped forward, reaching for a piece of bread. "You think you can protect them? You are alone." But the human was not afraid. He moved with purpose, setting a small trap behind him. Nothing deadly, but enough to slow them down. Sparks flew as he kicked a piece of metal, creating noise and distraction. The girls watched, eyes wide, realizing that survival was more than just finding food. It was knowing how to defend what mattered. The older girl whispered to her sister, "See? We are not helpless. Humans can be brave." The younger girl nodded, clutching her sister's hand. She began to understand a new truth. Courage was not about being fearless. It was about protecting those you cared for, even when danger was near. The scavengers hissed in frustration, not expecting the human to fight back. He was clever, fast, and determined. With a few well-placed moves, he forced them to retreat into the shadows, leaving the fire and the girls untouched. When the threat finally disappeared, the girls exhaled in relief. Their trust in him deepened. They had witnessed not just kindness, but courage, the kind of courage that turned fear into hope. Sitting back down, the older girl spoke softly. We have never seen humans like you. Most hurt others, take what they want. The human shook his head. Not all humans are like that. Some still care. Some still protect. You have to believe that. Even in a broken world, good can survive. The fire crackled, sending sparks into the night. The city outside was still dangerous. The past of the girls' civilization haunted them. But inside that small circle of light, they found a new lesson. Survival was not just about food or shelter. It was about trust, courage, and the choices one made. The older girl leaned closer to the fire, warming her hands. Maybe we can survive, maybe. We can live. The younger girl nodded, her eyes shining. With him, we have hope. The human watched them quietly. He knew that the night was only the beginning. The city had many dangers still. But for now, these two small lives, fragile yet strong, had discovered a simple truth. Even in the ruins of the past, courage and kindness could light a path forward. Outside, shadows moved. The city whispered its secrets. Danger had not vanished. But inside, at the small stall, hope had begun to grow. And for the first time since the collapse, it felt real. Morning broke slowly over the ruined city, washing the streets in a pale, gray light. The fire at the human stall had burned low during the night, but the warmth lingered, holding off the chill. The two alien girls stirred, stretching stiff limbs. Hunger had eased, but their thoughts were full of the events of the previous night, the kindness of the human, and the sudden threat of scavengers. The older girl looked at the human, a new determination in her eyes. "Sir, we want to help," she said quietly. We can do something. Not just eat," he raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Help? How?" "We can gather food. Watch the streets. Anything, we can." "Learn," she replied. Her voice was careful, almost nervous. "We want to survive, and we want to help you." The human studied her. In this broken city, trust was rare. People often used kindness as weakness, but these two small, fragile beings offered help not because they had to, but because they wanted to. That was something different. That was human, or almost human in its essence. "All right," he said finally. "You can help. But remember, you must be careful. The streets are dangerous. Even a small mistake can be deadly." The girls nodded, eyes wide with determination. They had been trained by hunger, fear, and survival. Now they would learn from someone who had seen the worst and the best of humanity. The older girl picked up a small basket and followed the human to the nearby ruins. "What should we do first?" she asked. "Watch, listen, and learn," he replied. "Look for food, but also watch for danger. Every scrap is precious, and every shadow can hide a threat." The girls moved cautiously, their eyes scanning every corner. Broken windows, shattered walls, and twisted metal could hide a scavenger or a predator. But with the human nearby, they felt courage growing inside them. Every small action they took, the careful gathering of roots, the discovery of a small water container, the scouting of an alley, gave them confidence. By midday, the girls were working more independently. The younger one found a small cache of dried fruit hidden in a collapsed building. Her eyes widened. "Look, we can eat and share." The human nodded, impressed. "Good. Always look carefully. Sometimes what seems small can save you." As they returned to the stall, the human watched them closely. He noticed how the girls began to act with initiative. The older one organized the food they had gathered, dividing it between themselves. The younger one helped sweep the immediate area of debris, clearing a small path that could be used to see approaching threats. "You see," he said quietly, "trust is not just given, it is earned. And right now you are learning to earn it." The girls glanced at each other. They had never thought of themselves as capable. Hunger had made them timid, fear had made them cautious. Now, in the company of someone who cared, they were learning a new strength. Suddenly, a sound broke the quiet, the soft shuffle of boots on broken concrete. The human froze, eyes narrowing. Two figures approached from the shadows carrying what looked like makeshift weapons. Raiders. They had returned, probably to test the strength of the human and to see if the girls were weak prey. "Hide," the human whispered. "Behind the wall. Do not move." The girls crouched low, hearts pounding. They watched as the human stepped forward, his stance firm and confident. He had taught them how to survive, but now they saw him put those lessons into action. He would protect them, not out of duty, but because it was the right choice. The raiders laughed, crude and cruel. "Food, we smell it," one shouted. "Hand it over, or we take it." The human did not flinch. He held a small trap in his hand, ready to create noise and confusion. The girls watched, realizing that bravery was more than action. It was strategy, intelligence, and the courage to face danger. With a sudden clatter, the trap went off, sending sparks into the air. The raiders stumbled, giving the human the upper hand. In moments, they were forced to retreat, frustrated and angry. The girls exhaled, relief flooding their faces. They had witnessed not just survival, but leadership. The human had shown them that courage was something you could choose, even when the world was cruel. Back at the stall, the girls began helping in small ways. They cleaned, organized, and prepared the food they had gathered. Every action, no matter how minor, was part of learning to survive, and part of building trust between them and the human. "See?" the older girl said quietly to her sister. "We can do this. We can survive. Together." The younger girl nodded, smiling faintly. "We are stronger than we thought." The human watched them quietly, pride hidden behind his rough exterior. These small lives, fragile and scared, were learning to stand in a harsh world, and in teaching them he was reminded of something he had almost forgotten. Even in collapse, humanity could inspire courage, kindness, and hope. As night fell, the girls sat near the fire, tired but content. They had learned to help, to protect, and to act. The city outside was still full of danger, and the past of their civilization still haunted them. Yet inside that small circle of warmth, they had discovered something new. Trust could be built, courage could be taught, and hope could grow, even in a city of ruins. Night fell like a blanket over the ruined city. The streets were darker than ever, shadows twisting into shapes that seemed alive. The human's small fire at the stall flickered weakly, throwing light across the two alien girls. Their eyes were alert, their bodies tense. They had learned courage and trust, but danger was never far. The human stood nearby, watching the streets, senses sharp. He had taught the girls to survive, but he also knew that teaching alone would not protect them from the real threats of the city. Tonight, those threats were coming closer. A sudden sound snapped through the night, the crunch of footsteps on broken concrete. The girls froze, their eyes wide. The older one whispered, "They're coming." The human's hand went to the small weapon at his side, and his other hand motioned for the girls to hide behind the stall. Their hearts pounded in unison. Hunger and fear were long gone. They had been replaced by something stronger, the instinct to survive. From the shadows, a group of raiders emerged. Their eyes gleamed in the firelight, cruel and hungry. They carried makeshift weapons, blades, metal rods, and broken tools. The smell of sweat and smoke mixed with the cold night air. They had come for food, for supplies, or perhaps just for the thrill of power. The human stepped forward, placing himself between the girls and the intruders. His voice was calm but firm. "This food is not yours. Leave now." The raiders laughed, low and cruel. "Weak human. You think you can stop us?" One shouted, stepping closer. The girls huddled together, remembering everything they had learned. Fear tried to creep back, but the older girl whispered, "We can help. We can do this." The younger one nodded, understanding. Together, they could make a difference. The human moved quickly, using the firelight and shadows to his advantage. He set a small trap, a pile of scrap metal that clattered loudly when disturbed. Sparks flew, scattering the raiders for a moment. They stumbled, and the human pressed the advantage. "Now," he shouted. The girls sprang into action. The older one grabbed a small container of sand and threw it into the eyes of one raider, blinding him temporarily. The younger girl kicked a loose stone, causing another to trip. The human fought beside them, moving with precision and force. Each strike, each movement showed experience and strategy. The raiders were stronger in numbers, but they were disorganized, and the human's tactics, combined with the girls' resourcefulness, gave them the upper hand. Sparks flew from metal clashes, dust rose from the streets, and the cries of frustration echoed through the ruined city. One raider lunged at the human with a rusty blade. The human sidestepped, using the raider's momentum against him. Another raider advanced on the girls, but the older one raised a small stick and jabbed it at his knee. He stumbled, giving her sister a chance to throw a stone at his side. The human shouted commands, coordinating their movements without words. Finally, after what felt like hours but was only minutes, the raiders backed away. Their weapons clattered to the ground as they fled into the darkness, their anger echoing in the empty streets. The human lowered his weapon, breathing heavily. The girls stood beside him, shaking but triumphant. "We did it," the older girl whispered. Relief and pride mixed in her voice. "We actually helped." The younger girl smiled faintly. "We are not helpless. We can survive. Together." The human nodded. He looked at the two small figures, fragile yet strong. "You did well. You were brave. Remember this feeling. This is what courage looks like. Not just fighting, but standing together when danger comes." They returned to the small fire, checking the stall and their supplies. Nothing was lost, nothing was stolen. The night was quiet again, but the lesson had been learned. Survival required more than food. It required courage, trust, and quick thinking. Sitting by the fire, the girls cleaned their small wounds and adjusted the little armor they had fashioned from scraps. They had learned more tonight than in weeks of foraging. The human watched them quietly, knowing that he had given them not just food or safety, but a spark of strength and confidence. Outside, the shadows shifted, as if watching. The city was still dangerous and more threats would come. But inside that small circle of light, hope had grown stronger. The girls had faced fear and lived. They had learned to act, to think, and to fight when necessary. The older girl looked up at the human. "Will we always be safe?" she asked softly. He shook his head. "No, not always. But you will survive. You will learn to protect yourselves. That is more important than safety. Safety is temporary. Survival is forever." The younger girl hugged her sister, feeling a strange warmth spread through her chest. They were no longer just victims of a collapsed world. They were learners, fighters, and allies. Together they could face whatever came next. The fire crackled quietly, throwing long shadows across the ruins. The night was still, but for the first time the girls knew that even in the darkness they could stand tall. Courage and hope once lost had been found again, and in the city of silence their small victory echoed louder than any shout. The first light of dawn painted the ruined city in soft gold. Broken buildings and shattered streets seemed less menacing under the morning sun. The fire at the human stall had burned low overnight, but warmth lingered in the small circle where he and the two alien girls sat. For the first time since the collapse, the city did not feel entirely empty. There was a small spark of life and hope. The older girl stretched and glanced at the human. We did it," she said quietly. Her voice carried a mixture of relief and wonder. "We survived the night. We helped. We learned." The human nodded. His rough hands brushed ash from the fire pit. "Yes, and you will survive many more nights. You have courage, resourcefulness, and trust. That is stronger than any weapon." The younger girl looked at her sister, then at him. We never thought humans could be like this. Kind, brave, helping us, protecting us." He smiled faintly. "Not all humans are cruel. Not all humans take what they want. Some still do what is right even when it is dangerous. You have seen that now. Remember it." For a while silence fell. The city outside was quiet but alive with distant sounds, the wind carrying faint echoes of the ruins, the soft creak of metal, the occasional cry of some lonely creature. Danger still lingered in every shadow, but inside that small circle, courage and hope were stronger. The older girl picked up a small piece of bread and broke it in half, handing one piece to her sister. "We can share. We can survive together. And maybe help others too." The younger girl smiled faintly. "Yes, we are not alone anymore." The human watched them, his eyes softening. In teaching them to survive, he had not just given them food or safety. He had given them something far greater, the knowledge that even in a broken world, compassion, courage, and humanity could survive. As they prepared for the day, the human explained what would come next. "We cannot stay in one place forever. The city has dangers you have not yet seen. You must learn to move, to forage, and to protect yourselves. But I will teach you. Together, we can rebuild a small piece of safety, a small community, even if the rest of the world is lost. The girls listened closely. The weight of responsibility settled on their small shoulders, but it was a good weight, a weight of purpose, not fear. They were learning not just to survive, but to live. Suddenly, a faint noise reached their ears. Movement in the distance. The human tensed, eyes narrowing. But as the sound grew closer, they realized it was not a threat. A small group of survivors, humans and aliens, emerged from the ruins. They carried food, tools, and supplies. They had seen the fire, smelled the smoke, and followed the faint light. The girls' eyes widened. They had thought they were alone in the world. Now they saw others who had survived, who had hope, who could join them in rebuilding. The human stepped forward to greet them. "You are safe here. You can join us. Together we are stronger." The older girl looked at her sister. We can help. We can survive. And maybe we can teach others too." The younger girl nodded, her eyes shining. "We will not be afraid anymore. We have courage. We have hope." As the group gathered around the small fire, the city seemed less threatening. The ruins were still there, broken and silent, but life was returning in small ways. Through courage, through trust, and through the bonds between humans and aliens. The human handed them more food, but this time it was different. It was not just survival. It was a symbol of community, of shared strength, of a new beginning. The girls ate, their bellies full, their hearts lighter. Night began to fall again, but it no longer carried the same fear. Shadows remained, but they were tempered by the knowledge that they were not alone. They had allies. They had trust. They had courage. The older girl looked at the human. "Thank you. For everything. For food, for protection, for showing us kindness." The human shook his head. "No thanks needed. You have learned well. You will survive. And one day you may teach others too. That is the true power of humanity. Not just survival, but compassion, courage, and hope." The girls smiled, feeling something they had never felt before. Certainty. They could face whatever the ruined city threw at them. They had learned to trust, to act, and to protect themselves and each other. And they had learned that even in a collapsed world, human kindness could change everything. As the fire flickered in the quiet night, the human, the girls, and the small group of survivors looked toward the distant horizon. The city might be broken, but life had returned in small ways. Hope was alive, courage was alive, and humanity, its best, kindest, bravest self, was alive too. The girls huddled together, smiling faintly, knowing that they were no longer just survivors. They were learners, protectors, and part of a new beginning. The streets of silence were no longer empty. They were filled with the quiet strength of life, the courage of humanity, and the unbroken spark of hope that would guide them into the future. And in the city of ruins, a small fire burned bright, a symbol of what could endure even when the world around it had fallen.